Sandra Bullock walked into the quiet corner of a film set, her scarf tucked against the chilly breeze. The city lights behind the studio glowed like scattered stars. She had spent the day helping a young volunteer crew rehearse a charity scene, and now she just wanted to breathe some fresh air. Keanu Reeves stood nearby, leaning against a railing with a half-finished cigarette. He wasn't a heavy smoker, but the habit had followed him through years of long nights and lonely roads. When their eyes met, there was a flicker of warmth, an unspoken connection built over months of shared scenes and quiet talks between takes. The first 5 minutes of that evening felt like a movie itself. A gust of wind carried the faint smell of smoke toward Sandra. She didn't flinch or frown. She simply lowered her gaze and softly said, "I don't like smoking." My mom hated the smell. She used to tell me it steals the clean air from everyone around. Her voice wasn't angry. It was gentle, almost sad. That gentleness hit Keanu harder than any angry words could. He felt a small twist in his chest. In that moment, the cigarette didn't taste like comfort. It tasted like disrespect to someone he deeply admired. He crushed it under his shoe without a word. Sandra blinked, surprised. "You didn't have to do that right now," she whispered. Keanu's reply was quiet but firm. "I don't want something between us that doesn't belong." For a moment, the noise of the crew and the city seemed to fade. A distant siren wailed. Laughter from a group of interns drifted in. The world kept moving, but a small, significant choice had just reshaped the path of two lives. They began walking along the empty studio lot. Sandra told him about her mother, about how strong and kind she had been, and how small things, like clean air, always mattered to her. Keanu listened, his hands tucked in his jacket, his mind replaying the sound of Sandra's voice when she said she disliked smoking. The next day on set, whispers spread. Someone had seen Keanu toss away his cigarettes for good. At first, people thought it was temporary, but by lunch break, he was sipping tea instead, a faint tremor in his hand betraying the difficulty of breaking old habits. That afternoon, during a rehearsal break, a young production assistant dropped a tray of coffee cups. Sandra bent down to help without hesitation. Keanu was already there, crouched beside her, his hands steady as he rescued a cup before it spilled onto her shoes. As they stood, their fingers brushed, an accidental touch that lingered a heartbeat too long. Sandra felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. She wondered if kindness could feel like a spark, if small gestures could carry something larger than words. Later, alone in his trailer, Keanu looked at the crumpled cigarette pack he'd left on the table. He didn't feel pride, only a quiet resolve. He whispered to himself, "It's just smoke. She's worth more than that." He opened a small notebook where he jotted thoughts and reminders. On the first blank page, he wrote, "Day 1, no smoke. Respect matters." Evening settled again. Sandra sat by her window, the city outside alive with distant honks and music. She thought about the way Keanu had crushed that cigarette without hesitation. She remembered the look in his eyes, not of sacrifice, but of understanding. Somewhere deep inside, she felt a shift. Not love. Not yet. Just a trust that maybe, in a world full of noise and ego, there were still people who would choose kindness quietly. But under the calm surface, tension brewed. An upcoming charity gala was only 2 weeks away. The studio had assigned Sandra and Keanu to co-host a live segment. The event was critical for raising funds for children's education programs. Sponsors were nervous, tabloids were watching, and the world expected a perfect performance. As Sandra drifted to sleep, she didn't know that the choice Keanu made tonight would echo louder than any headline. And she didn't know that outside the studio gates, a small group of paparazzi had captured a blurred image of Keanu tossing away his cigarette. By morning, the photo would ignite a wave of rumors, testing not just Keanu's resolve, but the quiet trust beginning between them. Sandra woke early the next morning to the soft hum of her phone. A flood of notifications lit up the screen. Social media posts, messages from friends, and a dozen links to entertainment blogs. The blurry photo of Keanu crushing his cigarette had gone viral overnight. Headlines whispered of sudden change and quiet devotion. Some called it a romantic gesture. Others mocked it as a publicity stunt. Sandra's chest tightened. She knew the world outside loved to twist simple moments into stories they could sell. She scrolled past the noise and paused on a message from her closest friend, Melanie. "Did you ask him to quit? People are saying you gave him an ultimatum." Sandra sighed, her fingers hovering above the keyboard before she set the phone down. She hadn't asked him for anything. All she had done was speak softly, share a memory of her mom, and walk away. In another part of the city, Keanu sat on the floor of his trailer, back pressed against the wall. His phone buzzed with missed calls from his publicist. Outside, the studio lot was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling past, crew members greeting each other with sleepy smiles. Keanu rubbed his temples. He hadn't expected the moment to explode across the internet. His choice wasn't meant for headlines. It was meant for Sandra. At breakfast, a young production assistant named Jay approached Sandra with cautious excitement. "I think what Keanu did was beautiful," he said. "People are sharing it everywhere. Some fans are saying it inspired them to quit too." His eyes shone with admiration, but Sandra felt a pang of worry. "Inspiration is good," she replied softly, "but we need to remember he's human. It's not easy to change overnight." The next few minutes on set were awkward. Whispers floated around like stubborn clouds. A camera operator nudged another crew member, pointing discreetly toward Keanu as he walked in. His hands trembled slightly, the first signs of nicotine withdrawal. Sandra watched him from across the room. She saw past the whispers, past the curiosity. She saw the quiet strength behind his calm face. During lunch break, they found a moment alone near the back of the studio. Sandra leaned against a wooden crate, arms folded loosely. Keanu stood a few feet away, sipping tea. The air between them felt heavy with unspoken words. "You didn't have to," she said finally. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes held a seriousness that made him lift his gaze. "I wanted to," he answered simply. It wasn't about pressure. It was about respect. A small smile curved her lips, though her heart still ached for him. She knew the headlines, the mocking comments could hurt. Before she could say more, the director called for them. The afternoon scenes were critical, moments of high emotion for the charity project. Cameras rolled, lights flared, and they slipped into their roles with seamless grace. But even as they acted, a subtle energy lingered between them, a mix of tension, admiration, and something unnamed. Later that evening, the studio hosted a private rehearsal for the charity gala. The stage was lined with soft lights, and a large screen displayed footage of children from around the world. Schools rebuilt after storms, libraries filled with donated books, classrooms buzzing with eager young faces. Sandra felt her throat tighten watching the images. Keanu joined her near the edge of the stage. "Every time I see these kids," he murmured, "it reminds me why small choices matter." "Small choices can change everything," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Just then, a stagehand tripped on a cable and nearly fell. Keanu lunged forward, steadying the man before he could hit the floor. The crew gasped. Sandra's heart skipped. It wasn't just the quick reflex. It was the way Keanu immediately checked on the stagehand, asking if he was okay, even after laughter broke out to ease the tension. As rehearsal ended, Sandra and Keanu walked out together into the cool night. The paparazzi's camera flashes flared like distant lightning beyond the gates. Sandra tensed, but Keanu stepped slightly in front of her, shielding her from the sudden brightness. She noticed the way he moved, not possessively, but protectively, with quiet care. On the ride home, Sandra gazed out the car window, city lights blurring past. Memories of her mother's voice floated back. "Kindness isn't loud, it's steady." She realized she was seeing that lesson play out again, not in a movie, not in a script, but in real life. Meanwhile, Keanu returned to his small apartment exhausted. He ignored the calls from his publicist and instead brewed a cup of herbal tea. On the counter lay a folded piece of paper, a note from his late sister, which he kept tucked away for moments like this. It read, "Real strength is gentle." He smiled faintly and whispered, "You'd like her. You'd like how she speaks." The following day brought a new challenge. A tabloid released a fabricated story suggesting Sandra had demanded Keanu quit smoking to protect her image. Hashtags swirled online, some supportive, others cruel. Sandra's phone buzzed endlessly. Keanu's silence on the matter only fueled speculation. But instead of anger, Sandra chose humility. She posted a short message. Respect is never demanded. It's chosen. Kindness is quiet. Within minutes, her post began trending, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. People shared it, calling it a reminder of decency in a noisy world. As the sun set that evening, Sandra and Keanu met at a small riverside cafe away from the city's noise. Fairy lights twinkled above wooden tables. The sound of water lapping against the pier filled the air. They sat together in silence for a long time before Sandra spoke. "Why does the world always want to make something simple complicated?" she asked. Keanu's eyes softened. "Maybe because real kindness is rare. And when they see it, they don't know how to believe it." A group of teenagers nearby recognized them but didn't approach. Instead, they watched quietly, whispering to each other about how seeing their favorite stars together gave them hope. As the night deepened, Sandra and Keanu walked along the pier. The moonlight painted silver ripples across the water. They didn't need big promises or dramatic declarations. In that moment, the simple act of walking side by side felt enough, like a seed of something that could grow quietly, away from the glare of the cameras. What neither of them knew was that a storm was forming far from the pier, an unexpected challenge that would test not just Keanu's resolve to quit smoking, but the fragile bond building between them. Tomorrow, a call from the charity's organizer would throw their plans into chaos, pulling them into a whirlwind of pressure, doubt, and an unforeseen twist that could either break their connection or make it unshakable. The morning began with a phone call that shattered the fragile calm. Sandra's ringtone pierced the quiet of her kitchen as she sipped her tea. When she answered, the voice on the other end trembled with urgency. It was Claire, the organizer of the charity gala. "Sandra, we have a problem," Claire said. One of the sponsors pulled out. "A major one. If we don't secure new support today, the children's education program could lose half its funding. The media is already circling." Sandra's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about a glamorous evening anymore. It was about the hundreds of children whose schools depended on that money. She promised Claire she'd come to the studio immediately. On the other side of town, Keanu was tying his boots when his phone lit up. His publicist had left 5 voicemails, but it was Claire's urgent text that froze him. "Meet us at the studio ASAP. Crisis." He slipped on his jacket and stepped out into the cool air, his mind already racing. When they arrived, the studio buzzed with tension. Stagehands whispered in corners, and screens showed headlines speculating on the gala's uncertain future. Claire paced the stage with a stack of papers, her face pale. "We can't let this collapse," she said, her voice cracking. "Too many kids are counting on us." Keanu exchanged a glance with Sandra. He saw the worry in her eyes, and something inside him hardened into resolve. "We're not letting it collapse," he said quietly, but saving the gala wouldn't be simple. The remaining sponsors were nervous, worried about negative press and financial risk. Some murmured that the viral photo of Keanu quitting smoking was a distraction, not an inspiration. Rumors claimed the event had lost focus. As the meeting dragged on, tension escalated. An executive questioned whether Keanu and Sandra were the right faces for the event. "Maybe the controversy is too fresh," he suggested. Sandra's hands curled into fists under the table, but she stayed silent, her mother's lesson about humility echoing in her head. Keanu, however, leaned forward. "There's no controversy," he said evenly. "There's a choice, and choices matter." His words silenced the room for a moment. But silence didn't solve the funding problem. After the meeting, Sandra and Keanu walked outside. The sun was warm, but the air felt heavy. Sandra rubbed her temples. "If we can't find another sponsor, all of this falls apart." Keanu looked toward the distant skyline. "What if we don't wait for someone else to step in?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, "we do something so real, so undeniable, that people can't help but believe in this cause again." His idea was bold. They would visit one of the schools the gala supported, unannounced, without cameras, and record a simple, honest message with the kids themselves. No scripts, no stage lights, just truth. That afternoon, they drove out of the city in a borrowed van. The road wound through quiet suburbs and into a small town where an aging school sat surrounded by bare trees. Children played soccer on a dusty field, their laughter rising above the rustling leaves. As soon as Sandra stepped onto the playground, a little girl with bright braids ran up and tugged at her sleeve. "Are you the lady from the movies?" she asked shyly. Sandra knelt and smiled. "Yes, but today I'm just here to listen." Keanu joined a group of boys tinkering with a broken swing. He crouched down, showing them how to twist the chain back into place. One boy, wearing a faded superhero shirt, looked up and whispered, "My mom says you're the guy who rides motorcycles." Keanu grinned softly. "Yeah, but fixing swings is even cooler." They spent hours at the school, talking with teachers about their needs, new books, safe playground equipment, basic supplies. Sandra recorded clips on her phone, children reading aloud, a teacher showing a handmade map, a boy offering half his sandwich to a friend. The authenticity of those moments felt stronger than any polished ad campaign. As the sun began to dip, Sandra and Keanu stood at the edge of the playground watching the kids chase a ball. She felt tears prick her eyes. "This," she whispered. "This is why it matters." Keanu nodded, his jaw tight with emotion. "We can't let them down." Back in the city, they uploaded the video privately and sent it to Claire with a simple message. "Show this to the board tonight. If they can't believe in this, nothing will change their minds." Hours later, Claire called back, her voice shaking. "Sandra, Keanu, you need to see what's happening." The video had been leaked, no one knew how, but within an hour it had gone viral. Unlike the tabloid photos, this time the public saw the unfiltered truth. Two actors on a dusty playground. No makeup, no publicity team, just kindness and children's laughter. Comments poured in from around the world. "This is what hope looks like. They're using their fame the right way. Reminds me to help my local school." Donations began flooding the charity's website, far surpassing the lost sponsor's contribution, but the sudden fame brought new challenges. Late-night shows replayed the clip, some applauding, others questioning their motives. A well-known critic posted a sarcastic remark online, suggesting it was all a stunt to rebuild Keanu's image. The post gained traction, and soon, debate raged. Sandra felt the weight of it all that night as she sat on her balcony overlooking the city. Her phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. "Are you okay? People can be cruel." Keanu, meanwhile, faced his own test. Cravings gnawed at him after a long, stressful day. The smell of cigarette smoke drifted from a neighbor's window. For a fleeting moment, the temptation burned, but he reached for the folded note from his sister instead. Her words, "Real strength is gentle," anchored him. He made tea, took a deep breath, and reminded himself why he had quit. The next morning, they met again at the Riverside Cafe. Sandra looked tired but determined. "We can't let the noise shake us," she said. Keanu smiled faintly. "Noise fades. What matters stays." They watched as a group of college students approached timidly. One girl spoke for the group. "We saw your video. It inspired us. We're starting a fundraiser on campus." Sandra's heart swelled. Kindness once again was multiplying quietly, but beneath the surface of these small victories, a storm still gathered. A powerful sponsor, embarrassed by the viral leak, had begun making calls to discredit the charity event. Tomorrow would bring unexpected accusations that could unravel everything they had fought for. Their bond and their resolve was about to face its toughest trial yet. The storm hit at dawn. Sandra's phone lit up with dozens of missed calls before the sun even rose. As she blinked sleep from her eyes, a headline flashed across her screen. Anonymous source claims gala organizers mishandled funds. The article accused the charity of misusing donations, and even suggested that Sandra and Keanu's playground visit had been staged to cover it up. Sandra's chest tightened. She knew the claims were false, but truth rarely mattered when gossip spread faster than facts. She threw on a sweater and dialed Claire. The organizer's voice cracked with panic. "They're trying to destroy us. The sponsor who pulled out is behind this. He's telling everyone we faked that video. Keanu arrived at the studio minutes later, his face grim but composed. The studio parking lot buzzed with reporters shouting questions. Cameras flashed like lightning as he stepped out of his car. One reporter called out, "Keanu, was the video real or a publicity stunt?" He didn't flinch. He didn't even pause to answer. He just kept walking, his jaw set with quiet resolve. Inside, Sandra paced the rehearsal hall. "They're twisting everything," she whispered when he entered. Keanu placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Let them twist. The truth stands longer than lies." But even as he said it, he felt a tremor of doubt. The internet was a raging ocean. Truth could drown there. Later that morning, the charity's board gathered in a small conference room. Papers and laptops littered the table. Tension crackled in the air. Claire looked exhausted, her hair pulled back hastily. "We have to prove every cent is accounted for," she said. "But even if we do, the damage might already be done." A nervous board member spoke up. "The sponsor is powerful. He can ruin our reputation." Sandra and Keanu exchanged a glance. Keanu leaned forward. "Then let's give people something undeniable. Something no rumor can erase." His idea was risky. Bring journalists directly to the schools, to the children whose lives had changed. Let them see the truth for themselves. But the board hesitated. What if the media twisted that too? Sandra broke the silence. "We can't hide," she said softly. "Hiding looks like guilt. The kids deserve better than fear." By afternoon, a small group, including Sandra, Keanu, Claire, and 2 trusted reporters, drove back to the school. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, as if the world itself held its breath. When they arrived, the children recognized Sandra and Keanu immediately and ran to greet them. The scene was pure, unplanned joy. A boy tugging on Keanu's sleeve to show a repaired swing. A girl offering Sandra a flower from the edge of the playground. One reporter, camera in hand, whispered to another, "This doesn't look staged." The second replied quietly, "You can't fake this kind of happiness." While the journalists interviewed teachers and students, a sudden shout erupted from the far end of the playground. A small boy had climbed too high on the jungle gym and slipped, dangling from a metal bar. Gasps filled the air. Keanu sprinted without hesitation, climbing up to reach the boy. He grabbed him firmly, lowered him to safety, and held him close until the child stopped trembling. Sandra knelt beside them, comforting the boy with calm words. The reporters caught every second of it, not as a scandal, but as a spontaneous act of care. One of them lowered his camera and said softly, "This isn't a stunt. This is real." Back in the city, the footage spread across news outlets. Headlines shifted. Keanu Reeves rescues child at charity school, and Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves defend children's education with action, not words. Donations spiked again, and messages of support poured in from around the world. But the sponsor behind the smear campaign wasn't done. Angered by the positive coverage, he leaked confidential emails from years ago, taken out of context, to imply financial mismanagement. That evening, social media buzzed with renewed suspicion. Sandra sat in her living room, the glow of the city outside her window casting long shadows. Exhaustion pressed on her shoulders. "I don't know how much more of this I can handle," she admitted to Melanie over the phone. Keanu, in his own apartment, sat staring at a mug of tea gone cold. The craving for a cigarette clawed at him again. He stood, paced, sat again. Then he reached for the folded note from his sister. He whispered the words aloud, "Real strength is gentle," and breathed until the urge passed. The next day, Sandra and Keanu appeared live on a morning talk show to address the accusations. The host, known for sharp questions, leaned forward. "Some people say you're using these children for your own image. How do you respond?" Sandra met his gaze. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. "I grew up watching my mom give everything she had to help others, even when no one was watching. Kindness doesn't need a camera. The only reason we're speaking today is because lies are loud. But kindness is quiet, and it lasts," Keanu added softly. "We're not here to protect our image. We're here to protect their future." Their sincerity struck a chord. Viewers flooded social media with messages of support using the hashtag #kindness is quiet. The tide began to turn again. That night, under a sky streaked with fading clouds, Sandra and Keanu met at the Riverside Cafe. The fairy lights flickered gently as they sat at their usual table. Neither spoke at first. The weight of the past days hung between them. Finally, Sandra broke the silence. "Why do you keep standing in the storm?" Keanu looked out at the dark water. "Because storms pass. But if you walk away too soon, you never see the rainbow." Her lips curved into a small, tired smile. In that simple answer, she felt a flicker of hope. Unbeknownst to them, a new twist was on the horizon. One of the reporters who had visited the school had discovered something unexpected, a hidden connection between the disgraced sponsor and a rival charity. By tomorrow, that revelation would ignite another wave of headlines, changing the story yet again and pushing Sandra and Keanu to make a choice that could redefine everything they stood for. The next morning broke with a pale golden light, soft but uneasy. Sandra woke to a buzzing phone again, but this time Claire's voice carried a fragile note of hope.
"You need to hear this,"
Claire whispered. "One of the reporters found proof. The sponsor who tried to smear us has been funneling donations to a rival group for personal gain. The story's about to break." For a moment, Sandra couldn't breathe. After days of doubt and whispers, truth finally had a chance to surface. But she also knew the reveal could trigger chaos, more headlines, more anger, and more pressure on the charity. Keanu arrived at the Riverside Cafe an hour later, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. When Sandra told him, his expression stayed calm, but a flicker of determination sharpened his eyes. "This isn't just about clearing our names," he said quietly. "This is about protecting the kids. If this explodes, they can't get lost in the noise." The cafe's door opened again, and Jay, the young production assistant, rushed in, breathless. "You're trending again," he blurted. "People are already taking sides. Some are defending you, but others are saying you used this whole thing to take down the sponsor." Sandra felt a pang in her chest. "We didn't do this to hurt anyone," she whispered. Keanu placed a hand gently on her arm. "Then let's show them what we're really fighting for." They decided to go public, not with anger or accusations, but with honesty. Claire arranged a last-minute press conference at the charity's small office, a modest building with mismatched chairs and fading posters of smiling children. Reporters crammed into the tiny space, cameras perched on tripods like watchful birds. As Sandra stepped up to the microphone, she could feel the weight of every eye on her. She took a slow breath, remembering her mother's words. "Kindness isn't loud, it's steady. We're not here to trade blame," she began, her voice steady but warm. "We're here because hundreds of children need classrooms, books, and hope. Whatever anyone else has done, the focus should stay on them." Keanu spoke next, his voice low and deliberate. "Mistakes and betrayals happen in every corner of the world, but they don't get to steal the future from those kids. We'll keep showing up for them, quietly if we must." As they finished, a reporter raised his hand hesitantly. "If the gala fails, what then?" Keanu and Sandra exchanged a look. She stepped forward again. "Then we'll find another way. We'll sell our scripts, we'll play in empty theaters, we'll knock on doors. Kindness doesn't quit." The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Then a single clap rang out, followed by others, until the tiny office echoed with applause. That night, the breaking news hit every major outlet. The disgraced sponsor's scheme was exposed. The rival charity issued a swift apology, claiming ignorance, but the damage to his reputation was irreversible. Social media exploded with support for Sandra and Keanu. Donations surged again, and volunteers signed up in droves. But even as the tide turned in their favor, another complication arose. Claire called late in the evening. "We're short-staffed," she said, her voice cracking with exhaustion. "So many volunteers signed up that we don't even have a way to organize them. We need a leader, someone the public trusts, to guide this." Sandra glanced at Keanu across the cafe table where they now sat, finishing their late-night tea. "We can do it," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Both of us?" "Both," she confirmed. They believe in us now. Let's give them direction. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly, calling donors, visiting schools, and coordinating volunteers. Sandra handled logistics with calm precision, while Keanu moved through the chaos with quiet strength, always ready with a kind word or a steady hand. One afternoon, while sorting donated supplies at the studio, a small girl approached Sandra shyly. She held out a crumpled drawing, a picture of two stick figures holding hands beneath a rainbow. "This is you and Mr. Reeves," the girl whispered. "My mom said you saved our school." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. She knelt to the girl's level and whispered back, "We didn't save your school." "You and your friends did, by reminding everyone what matters." As the gala approached, anticipation and tension built. The event was now more than a fundraiser. It had become a symbol of resilience. News outlets promised live coverage. Fans camped outside the venue, holding signs with messages like "Kindness is quiet" and "Choices matter." The night before the gala, Sandra found herself on the balcony of her apartment staring at the city lights. She thought about the path that had brought her here, the quiet talk about smoking, the viral photo, the playground visit, the accusations, and the storm. She felt both tired and grateful. Her phone buzzed with a text from Keanu. "Just remember, tomorrow is about the kids." "Not us," she smiled faintly, replying, "I know, but thank you for staying." Keanu, sitting alone in his apartment, set the phone down and took another deep breath. The cravings had lessened, but he knew temptation might always linger. Yet tonight he felt strong, not because he had quit smoking, but because he had chosen respect again and again, even when no one was watching. The next morning, as the sun rose over the city, the final preparations for the gala began. The hall shimmered with golden lights and rows of chairs gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Banners displayed photos of the children whose futures hung in the balance. Outside, cameras flashed and fans cheered. But somewhere beyond the glitter and noise, forces still worked against them. Whispers suggested that the disgraced sponsor had one last move planned, a desperate attempt to sabotage the evening. Sandra and Keanu stood side by side at the edge of the stage, gazing out at the empty seats that would soon be filled. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the lights. "Whatever happens tonight," Sandra said softly, "we stand together." Keanu nodded. Together. Neither of them knew that within hours, the gala would take an unexpected turn, one that would test their resolve, expose hidden truths, and lead to a moment so powerful that even their critics would fall silent. The day of the gala unfolded like a breath held too long. Golden light spilled through the tall windows of the hall, catching on the crystal chandeliers and rows of chairs draped in white. Soft music played as volunteers hurried between tables, adjusting flowers and polishing silverware. Sandra arrived early, wearing a simple black gown that shimmered under the lights. She took a long breath, remembering her mother's words about humility, how quiet acts can echo louder than applause. Keanu entered moments later, his dark suit crisp but understated. When their eyes met across the empty hall, a small, steady smile passed between them. There was no need for words, just the unspoken promise they'd made, to stand together no matter what. By evening, the hall was full. Cameras lined the back walls, their red recording lights blinking like watchful eyes. Celebrities mingled with teachers, donors, and former students who had been touched by the charity's work. A low hum of conversation filled the air, charged with expectation. As the opening speeches began, whispers rippled through the crowd, rumors that the disgraced sponsor had arrived uninvited. Sandra glanced toward the far end of the hall and saw him. An elegant man in an expensive suit, a fixed smile on his face. His presence sent a shiver of tension through the room. When Sandra took the stage to speak, her heart pounded. "Tonight," she began, her voice calm, "we are here for one reason. Children who deserve a future filled with hope." She paused, scanning the crowd. "Kindness isn't complicated. It doesn't need perfection. It just needs action." A sudden commotion interrupted her. The sponsor stepped forward, holding up a folder. "Before anyone donates another cent," he declared loudly, "you all should see the truth." He waved papers in the air. Cameras swung toward him. Keanu stepped calmly onto the stage beside Sandra. "If you have something to show," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "then show everything, not just pieces." One of the reporters from the school visit, seated near the front, stood up. "We've already seen the full truth," she said clearly, "and so has the world." She revealed a new report, evidence linking the sponsors' scheme to funds stolen from multiple charities. Murmurs spread like wildfire through the hall. The sponsor's confident smile faltered. Security approached quietly and guided him out. Applause began, hesitant at first, then growing. Sandra felt her hands tremble slightly as relief washed over her. But Keanu wasn't looking at the cameras or the applauding crowd. He was watching a group of children sitting in the front row, their faces lit with hope. He crouched down, speaking softly to one little boy who had been part of the playground visit. "You're the reason we're all here," he said. The boy grinned shyly and handed him a small paper star. When it was time for the final speech, Sandra and Keanu stood together. "Tonight isn't about rumors or headlines," Sandra said. "It's about every small choice that leads to something bigger." Keanu added, "I quit smoking because one person's quiet honesty mattered more than my habit. And now, because so many people chose kindness, these schools will stay open." The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Volunteers passed baskets through the crowd, and donations poured in faster than anyone had expected. By the end of the night, they had raised more money than the original goal, enough not just to keep the schools open, but to expand the program to new communities. After the gala, when the cameras were gone and the hall had emptied, Sandra and Keanu stood on the quiet stage beneath the fading glow of the chandeliers. The air smelled faintly of flowers and wax. "You didn't just quit smoking," Sandra said softly, looking at him. "You reminded me what real respect looks like." Keanu smiled, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "And you reminded me that kindness is worth the noise." Outside, the night was cool and clear. They walked side by side to the waiting cars, passing a group of volunteers still laughing and hugging. One young girl held up a handmade sign that read, "Kindness is quiet." Sandra stopped, took the sign, and handed the girl her own bracelet as a keepsake. As they parted ways at the cars, there was no dramatic declaration, no grand gesture, just a simple, shared look that said more than words could. Their lives would move forward, filled with new challenges, new projects, and new storms. But this moment, this proof that small choices could change everything, would stay with them. In the weeks that followed, the video of Keanu crouching to speak to the children and Sandra's words about kindness flooded timelines worldwide. People quit smoking, donated to schools, volunteered in their neighborhoods, and shared quiet acts of care. Far from the cameras, on a quiet evening months later, Sandra and Keanu visited the school again. The playground had been repaired, the classrooms freshly painted, and laughter filled the air. A little boy tugged on Keanu's sleeve again and whispered, "Thank you for choosing us." Keanu glanced at Sandra, then back at the boy. "Thank you for reminding us why small choices matter." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sandra watched the children play and felt a deep peace settle over her. Storms would always come, rumors would always rise. But kindness, steady, quiet, and real, would always outlast them. The story of a simple choice, a crushed cigarette, and a promise kept, had grown into something bigger than both of them. And in that golden light, with laughter ringing out across the playground, Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves knew they had chosen the path that truly mattered.